Hold on. Can you guys hear me now, Paul? Oh, great. Thanks, Ashley.
So whoever is speaking, speak very loudly. Makes you louder.
Luckily, I don't think we have any public participants in line except for open space staff. She was? Right.
She was.
Okay. But she's not there anymore.
So we will restart the meeting, and I'd like to note that Commissioner Fox has also attended the meeting. So the location we were at is business items, and this is an informational item on an update for the drone show over Coconino High School. And you will have to come and speak into the.
You can sit up here with us. Yeah, feel free to just join us.
Here, take this one. I'll get another one. You come sit. So she has a slideshow to share with us.
I do. I actually have our map. So if you go on your computers to discoverflagstaff.com, and I can drop the link into the chat. The public map for this event and all of that public information is regularly updated by our Discover Flagstaff team. But just to start from the beginning, PROS has partnered with Economic Vitality, specifically Discover Flagstaff, to put on a drone show this 4th of July. It will launch from Coconino High School from the back ball field, fly up, and then we'll cusp the mesa, that hill, which gives it a perfect view from the entire Sunnyside neighborhood. It'll be a perfect view from Buffalo Park, which are listed viewing areas. We did bring this project to council in April for contract approval. That contract was approved in the amount of $95,000 to Open Sky, a very reputable drone company. It's a completely custom animation. We'll have 300 drones. The show will go just over 23 minutes. Custom audio soundtrack. There will be a live streaming component. So there'll be a drone in the air recording for our collateral, and then it will also live stream to the city's YouTube channel. The only caveat there is with audio, there's a copyright infringement issue if you stream audio straight to YouTube. So you'll still have to tune into our radio station. Great Circle Media has sponsored the entire audio presentation. And it'll broadcast on all of the radio stations we'll take over the radio station at 9:07, and that'll cut at about 9:30, 9:35. The show begins at 9:10 p.m. That's a hard start time. It'll be completely dark. On this map that you'll see on that website, it has designated places to view with some parking, places to view with no parking. It also has things to know, like do not drive on the trails, different access points, and then it'll show the rings of visibility. So best viewing, good viewing, okay viewing. All of our recreation centers, or I should say 3 out of our 4 recreation centers, are in what is considered good viewing, if not best viewing. So Hal Jensen will have extended hours. They'll open from 7 p.m. and then they will stay open till 10 p.m. I believe there'll be some activation within that facility, and then those restrooms will be open to the public. Sorry. The Aquaplex they'll have extended hours. So I believe they'll have programming up until 9 p.m. And then the building will remain open until about 9:30, 10, again, for restrooms. Jay Lively is, go ahead, not an optimal viewing location, but it is a parking location where you could easily access Buffalo Park. So we will extend that programming again, probably till about 8:30, 8:45, and then encourage people to go up the hill to Buffalo Park or even just walk out to Cedar Avenue. They'll be able to leave their cars, but they'll still be able to utilize the restroom. We are placing public restrooms in the Moonshot parking lot, so up towards Buffalo Park. We'll place restrooms a couple other places close to the trail, close to bus stops. And then we have a pretty extensive traffic control plan that includes no parking along Gemini, no parking along Cedar. Specifically, Cedar and Forest are going to be signboards that are stating no parking, keep moving, especially then ahead. Because we know that when you're driving a vehicle and you see drones in the air, your first instinct's probably going to be to pull your car over because it's going to look so cool. We will also, along Gemini and Jasper, will be signed no parking. And then we are working with Quill Construction, who is our traffic control vendor, to place some additional no motorized vehicles authorized in these areas at some of those access points along McMillan Mesa. In addition to the signage, park staff will be stationed at Buffalo Park and in a couple other locations to address bathroom issues, as well as just some public communication. I believe open space may have some staff wandering throughout the trail system to encourage like good stewardship. Don't block the trail. Don't obviously no motorized vehicles. That's, I think, the gist of it. Do we have questions? Perfect, thank you. Are there any questions? So that's a valid question. So it is essentially a light display with animation in the sky. So you pick your drone count, and our request for proposal included minimum 300 drones. That's what I've seen in person that I think is going to be the best. They are programmed together to sync up to music and to do a different display of images. So we have some patriotic images, some very Flagstaff centric, an indigenous component that we did run by our indigenous coordinator to make sure that was respectful. And they just fly in different sequences with different lights to create really, really interesting images. So it's a partnership, it's a collaboration between pros and then economic vitality. We do something for 4th of July every year, and it's a city event. Yeah, it's a pros event. I work for the division. I should have clarified that. And then it is a transfer out of economic vitality's budget into our budget to pay that contract.
So the parking is at J Lively, it's at Coconino High School,
There's no parking at Coconino High School. That
Safeway.
you could park at Safeway.
I
The
was wondering that we're telling people.
green law parking lot. So economic vitality did engage all of the businesses within the perimeter if they want to be included on the map specifically as parking. If they want to do private parking and ticket it, fundraise it, we engaged all the schools that are going to be in that radius. But yes, we are encouraging people to park at Buffalo Park, utilize alternative modes of transportation. Buses run until 8 p.m. And then it would just be you need to figure out your way home. The trail system is overlaid slightly on the map, not as extensively, but that's what we're hoping is the entire Sunnyside neighborhood does not need to move. They should be able to see that from their home or from a street up. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Comment, just to put this in perspective, it's a fraction of the cost of traditional fireworks shows that the city has paid for in the continental area. So this is a replacement largely in part by in deference to our fire restrictions.
I'm sorry.
It will crash. It'll automatically come.
Yes, so yeah, and that's an interesting one I actually learned about. If there's like an airplane within the area, which there shouldn't be, we have all the permits, we've talked to all the right people. The drones will land themselves. If there's an anomaly, too heavy of a gust of wind, they'll just land themselves as a safety precaution. I'm sorry.
What about its proximity to FMC with emergency helicopter?
It's Class G airspace. So the drones they do fly in the flight path. Guardian and all of the air transport that could be landing at the hospital or leaving the hospital is aware, and they'll fly a different path.
That's gonna be my question. Did you get towed from the upstairs?
We do have FAA permission.
But I know they can go up to 400 feet.
Yeah.
Anything above that, the FAA has to give you a waiver.
Yeah, so it's Class G airspace, so it requires FAA notice. It doesn't require an FAA permit, essentially. It's a waiver, and they go 400 feet above the highest point.
Must be pretty high to see it from all the.
It's pretty high. Yeah.
The first one, the coverage that's on. Fortunately, long enough for people to get home. Is there no concession or with public transit to create a bus system or a bus route for the event person to park at a large parking lot?
We did speak with Mountain Line. They just don't have capacity to extend hours in service this year. I think as this event grows, that is park and ride is something that we're exploring. But for a first year, I think our messaging is really going to be, please just be respectful of the area you're in. It would be, I think it's going to be similar impacts that we see when we used to do an event in Coconino, at Continental Country Club. I'm sorry.
Part of the marketing, so you can do other ways to encourage them to fight for.
Those are all going out.
Second question is, you also mentioned walking trails to encourage people to walk trails and be respectful, is all that following. Ethics also, sorry.
Yeah, our messaging is currently mimicking what is occurring on the foots and go to the bathroom. And yeah, so it'll be a leave no trace. It will be no motorized vehicles, no anything that would be prohibited regularly. And then yeah, we are hoping that that messaging throughout the trail system, just to catch people, because we do anticipate obviously tourists are going to be coming in and hopefully can be respectful.
I just have one question. So I know that you have volunteers. Are people going to be identified a certain way who's a volunteer, or like I just would be a little fearful of being an open space commissioner, being like, here are the rules, but not really the rules.
I would assume there'll be an orange vest. That's a logistics component that we're working on this week as we compile the list of volunteers. They'll be properly educated on what they should be saying,
Okay.
what they should be contacting staff for, and what we would be contacting people.
Okay.
But yes,
Maybe you can shoot us an email that says if you want to volunteer. Oh no, I'm really busy that week.
just I think there's
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's something to-
questions.
Sounds great. You've done a super job.
Thank you.
Well-
I hope it is great. They're really cool. Yeah, it'll be awesome.
And ours is gonna be better than anything that you see on the.
It will be.
Right. We will not burn the forest.
We will not burn the forest down.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
More than that.
Thank you. Right now.
Um,
Thanks, Haley, for coming in and doing a presentation on your off time. Really appreciate it.
the map is
Um,
at discoverflagstaff.com.
Does the commission have any more thoughts or discussion on that item? Do you want to call for public participation? And just as a reminder, I know it's your first meeting, but we call for public participation usually at the end of an item, and then you can comment on that at that point.
So is there any public comments? Oh. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to item B, Observatory Mesa Natural Area renaming consideration. So this is a discussion item that we will not be making a decision on today. It's a decision for a later meeting. And Robert's going to share a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is something that's come up a couple of times in the conversations here at the commission and also with the city council the other day when we went to them with the trail plan. So they kind of talked a little bit about like altering the name of the trail plan, but also like not advertising the Observatory Mesa Natural Area for a lot of tourism. And so I think that this is kind of a stem off of that particular advice that we got from city council. So I was hoping that the commission could have a little discussion and weigh in on what they thought the pros and the cons of like renaming Observatory Mesa to something else might be, and think about what the implications could that mean, such as like new signage, website updates, any internal documents that we might need to update and that sort of thing as well. So with that, I'll just turn it over to the commission and let you guys discuss, and if I can help, let me know.
So the idea is to change it, to rename it to the Observatory Mesa Natural Area.
That's its current name.
Well, that's
Yep.
its current name,
Yep, that is its current name.
but that's the name that's on all the paper signs. So it would be this shouldn't play into the discussion of changing the name, but I just think something that we can change the name, but I think it's gonna be a little while. So there's a new public. can be seen on the signs. We can more readily change it on paper, but we do have a plan to get all those new signs with the new trail plan, so I don't wanna. There's just gonna be a delay. I don't think we need to have a discussion about how we're gonna implement it at this point. I think there's some discussion about it. Well, when we met with this, city council for the presentation of the trail plan, very meeting. I was just gonna, yeah, I was part of some of the initial voice. Um, when I did speak at city council, I commented at the very end was, after all of the trail plan was done, and to either what its current name is or something that's expressed compensation. That for 3 years we've concentrated trail plans, hiking trails, mountain biking trails, and that it came across as now we have a new trail system on Observatory Mesa. And yes, we do, but it was more of a function of management of trails up there, not to announce a brand new great trail plan. Come one, come all. I just felt that the area could be subject to overturn. If there was too much marketing about a trail plan, if that caught fire, so to speak. Maybe that's a bad choice of words. But that I thought that we really needed to turn back to its roots of Observatory Mesa. There were suggestions I had made for Observatory Mesa Natural Preserve, Observatory Mesa Conservation Area, or just reserve. Something that really got that. Yeah, Robert, brought up the idea for other are natural preserve. And that consistency would say. I that idea, all of our
I'll jump in. Picture canyon. That forest. The Picture Canyon Preserve has the same things. State land. Sure, the application was good. But these are the only two they own. To be similar, different, and say no basic natural. That's a city owned land. So the first consistency point is the same picture. So the other, I think, they're just like. Second consistency is the actual application. This would Arizona your permission. Or it's existing. And if you read that whole thing, for the basic the third consistency argument, I put all of the word serve. All the way through. Talks about features should be taken. So that's. Or it's similar to it's tricky. Here's money. In particular, they're going to make other than through their initiative. Here's what they eligible did receive a $6 million grant. Funding that. That was the purchase of food. And in that pamphlet, and it's approved a number of different things. Service mentioned. That portion. So, for control. So I made my point of doing addendum. I was, this year. That to make it consistent. First Avenue off. Cedar Avenue. And businesses got real upset because. But really, big thing. Just a- So I think to be consistent, we should.
I think you made some really good points. It might be important to loop in Lowell Observatory with their piece. Do they have any, I mean, everybody considers their chunk of land part of the Observatory Mesa. And I mean, is the word preserve? I'm just wondering, like, we wouldn't want something called Observatory Mesa Preserve over here, and this little tiny section of one section called Lowell Observatory. Bellevue. I mean, I don't know, maybe that is, but
I can provide a little bit of clarification, if that's okay.
yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for all the comments, commissioners, appreciate it. So the trail plan, by the way, is an internal document. It's not like, I mean, we published it on our website so people can see it, right? And they kind of know that it's been completed, but it's meant to direct implementation of that trail plan. It's not like a public document that's supposed to be like, here you go use Observatory Mesa, right? So we did change the name of the trail plan to the Great Observatory Mesa Natural Area Plan for City Council, and we can make sure that it states that on our website. If that is of preference to the commission, that's no problem on our end at all. But we are talking about the naming of just our property. We're not talking about like naming the private property or Coconino National Forest that's also included in the multi-jurisdictional trail plan. So we're just talking about naming the property. As Nat and Mary and some of your other mentioned, the name that we have for Picture Canyon is Picture Canyon Natural and Cultural Preserve. That's our name for that. And then for McMillan Mesa, it's McMillan Mesa Natural Area, Observatory Mesa Natural Area. Those name differences don't actually have much of a difference in the way that we manage them. So because it's called a natural area versus a preserve, we don't allow like different uses at one another just because of the name difference, just for clarification. So I don't think changing the name is going to like really change the way we manage the property. It's more about like what we communicate to the public, right? So like what idea we want folks to have when they read the name. So I think like we certainly can change the name of the city's natural area. Um, so, but I don't think there's anything restricting us to like keeping the name as it is. So if we wanted to change it to something, we could, yeah.
Victoria Mesa. But the value of is cities, forests, cities, woods. So finding observatory Mesa, but what that means is that it was the city preserve, got this acreage set aside to this town. Yeah, of forest, then our mountain. Forest. If we're gonna change, I feel that further.
There's other cities that. So there's a lot of other cities and townships where. The main thing I was. That, kind of to the point. Actual area, could we consult with tribal members for that area, so that it's the things that we think here.
I think I was trying to restore and garner as much respect for that area. And it was, so whatever word meaning gets us there, that's, I was really concerned about how it's marketed, that's a marketing background, and how, and preventing or. The name is confusing. Good regulation. For at least 100 years. And the neighbor, I didn't check this, the neighbor never used GPS maps. And it doesn't, it recognizes history. Doesn't necessarily recognize local observatory. It's dates back to. Um, and it's always been reserved. The Mars Hill or Observatory Mesa. Mars Hill usually is referred to. Oh, and oh, that was 640, that was section 17. Lowell has all the rights to it. Intending now, they were to cut the trees. Original arrangement. Said that Lowell have this acreage for observatory purposes, but the Forest Service has control of the trees. Well, decade or so back, or 2 decades back, the Forest Service said, we don't need these. So now just means that for the observatory. So social tree. Yeah, when I first got there, so that section 17 is separate from
Can we pause just for a second here? I think we're going to change microphones so we can get a little bit better volume online. So just, no, you're good. You're good. That's not your fault.
All right.
Thanks.
So my whole point, my whole point is that the Observatory Mesa name has been used for decades and decades. Just like McMillan Mesa and Schweitzer Mesa, and it comes from a historic perspective. So I would argue for Observatory Mesa.
Yeah, I just want to go back to what came up at the meeting, which was what Mary was saying is that we really just don't want to see massive marketing of a Observatory Mesa Trail plan. So it was just if we just could talk about the Observatory Mesa Reserve, or we just leave it as the Observatory Mesa Natural Area. It was just really a push to actually ask like the Chamber of Commerce not to use it as a big promotional aspect. I guess I'm just wondering, like, is there a massive benefit to changing the name of Observatory Mesa Natural Area when we know we would have to change it on signs and letterhead and paperwork? Or is this something we want to maybe discuss when the trail plan starts getting implemented? Or is this something we really want to, I mean, besides the need, I mean, I'm not saying what you said was really important, but, and what Nat said and what the city council recognized it, I mean, it may change what we need to be doing right now, I guess that's what I'm wondering. Or do we want to bring it up with a bunch of different names next, in a different meeting that we consider, or are we, I mean, I guess I'm really like, do we have great benefit in changing the name?
Yeah, well, I see two important benefits.
Okay,
Number one, Mary's made the point that Reserve sends out a message.
Okay.
Okay. Number two, why have one reserve over here and a natural area over here, and then on McMillan Mesa, another natural area, when we really have two reserves as far as our documents and history? And if we're going to change it, it's time to change it now, and not until we get all the signs all the way.
Right.
And I guess the council is one to decide on. We just give the advice, right? But can we?
I don't think this would have to be a council decision. I guess I'd defer to Rebecca on that one.
I agree with you.
Yeah. A couple of thoughts from staff though, and that is like, I think it is actually nice to recognize that it's city property and not, Foresters. We do have an integration of the system there at Observatory Mesa though, that's going across Foresters and city property and maybe Lowell property someday too. So that's something important to think about. We do have other signage that does say City of Flagstaff open space. And I do actually think that it is a nice idea to like advertise that it's part of our city infrastructure. Maybe we don't have to do that in the title of the name. Maybe we do actually currently have insignia like the city and there's some state parks, like on our current signs out at Picture Canyon. Yeah, so that gives folks hopefully an idea that it's run by the city in partnership with others as well. So whatever we decide to do, I think consistency is really important. If we're changing the name to like City of Flagstaff, something or another, I think we really have to do that across the board. So let's think about that. Or like if we were doing that, we'd have to do that for Picture Canyon as well. But we're definitely all about, I think, like communicating the respect for the area that Commissioner Norton mentioned, and having consistency across the board, I think is important as well. So, sure. Thanks.
To expand on both Nat's and Robert's points, though the origin story for McMillan Mesa is different, functionally, they serve the same purpose and managed consistently and with the same objectives. So I would suggest that we go for three and that all three of them are called, have the preserve in their title. So it's Picture Canyon, historical, cult, yeah, whatever. But all three of them are preserves. And I think that sends a message, and then it doesn't leave picture, McMillan Mason kind of out there. Well, what's the difference between a natural area and a preserve? They're all preserves. We're managing consistently, same objectives.
I would say they're not the same. Picture Canyon and Observatory Mesa have a state conservation easement. McMillan Mesa, the state is the city land, period. There's no strings attached to it. There are strings attached to Picture Canyon, and there are strings attached to Observatory Mesa. And I think that's a critical point that separates even Buffalo Park. I mean, why should we call it Buffalo Park? Why can't we call it Schweitzer Park? It's on Schweitzer Mesa. We could get into the weeds on this. My thought was very simple. Preserve is used through the whole documentation and to the voters. The concept of it is a reserve with recreation within it. Picture Canyon has a cultural aspect to it, but it also has the recreation aspect to it, and preservation. I think those two, their history, the documentation, what we're trying to achieve with Mary's comment about saying that, this is a facility for our community. But we're not going to keep out people coming in, but it is for our community, and preserve kind of recognizes that. That's where I'm coming from. I didn't mean it. I wasn't thinking of this in terms of all the details that we could get into. But I do recognize the practical part of it. If we don't decide on a name very soon, the cost may, just like the Cedar Avenue Forest, may make it not a reasonable thing to do. So that's where I'm from. I could vote right now and say Observatory Mesa Natural Area Preserve or something like that, or just Observatory Mesa Preserve.
But we're not voting now, but Commissioner Joyce. That's an easy option for sure, as far as just, we don't really want to have to hash this out for weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
Sure, that works, like you said, so historically people have called it that.
Yeah.
My only urge in wanting to go back to my point from earlier, you asked why right now should we even consider renaming it? Because opportunistically, like you said, do it now before there's a large price tag attached to re-signing everything and so on. Again, I think that calling it a preserve or natural area as the subtext, great. I would just think also though, at this point right now, I know Coconino High School students, Indigenous students from Coconino High School have been successful in pushing and urging the renaming of Agassiz Peak, for example, to its Indigenous name. So it would be very salient to try and show that respect, considering the fact that we open this meeting with a land acknowledgement every single month. I think that we should try to embrace that more and invite in that dialogue. Because even the Mount Eldon Dry Lake Hills program or project, they brought in Indigenous consultation for the trail namings. And that's why all the trails are named what they are. So I think that it would be prudent of us to open up that conversation or talk to staff members who are Indigenous, or bring in a consultant, someone who could give a better idea of the Indigenous history of that parcel and not just the settler history of that parcel. Because yes, the observatory's been there for over 100 years and is a large part of the contemporary Flagstaff community, but that's not
the only history. I mean, you bring up a good point, which are trail names. And that would certainly, be a really, maybe a ideal place to bring in indigenous contributions, the way that the Forest Service did versus like changing the name Dry Lakes. They didn't, it's still called Dry Lakes up there, but they've got a outlet trail. Commissioner Cooley?
Yeah, I think, pick up on Robert's point, I think if we had the city idea, the city has preserves, here's the three of them. Get McMillan Mesa, Observatory Mesa, and Picture Canyon, so you get this overarching, the preserves the city has, gets that city idea. Then it's easy, all three are preserves. But that's not to take away from either naming, bringing Indian, and clearly in the trails, that's a whole separate issue. I think as you go forward, you have some trail naming contests and things. I mean, this is a different topic now, but I think to get buy-in for the whole trail system, come up with some ideas like that is good. Very good. But that's a separate item. Put it aside. I would go for preserve for everything, simply because natural. I hate the word natural because it means nothing. An area doesn't mean much either.
Can I just ask for clarification, Robert? All three of those areas, Picture Canyon, Observatory Mesa, and McMillan Mesa, are managed exactly the same, regardless. I mean, because Nat has these the easements that exist on two of them, not on one.
Yeah, that's right. We have two conservation easements, one of Fisher Canyon and one of Observatory Mesa. Those do have special parameters, like how much we can develop, for instance. Where McMillan Mesa does not have a conservation easement, but there are parameters within Proposition 4 and 3, which helps protect McMillan Mesa that was citizen driven, and that has limitations about development. So that, in a sense, is like management directive as well, but it does not have a conservation easement. You're correct. So, and just for clarity, our current names for our natural areas, what we want to call them, is Picture Canyon Natural and Cultural Preserve. And then I think as we were moving forward, we were trying to look at like how can we like be somewhat consistent, because our other areas don't have a lot of cultural resources. We didn't want to use the word cultural in there, and so that's where McMillan Mesa Natural Area and Observatory Mesa Natural Area come in. So just for a little background.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the idea of the conservation easements, because I do think it's important to sort of elevate these properties a little bit out of respect for those conservation easements for the future. Like when we're no longer serving on open space and Robert's retired, I mean, to have that name preserved and give account to the conservation easements that are forever attached to those properties, I think it almost gives a level of future protection and respect for those properties. So, I think that's kind of why I agree with, whether it's Observatory Mesa Natural Preserve or just Observatory Mesa Preserve. I don't have a problem with it being different than McMillan Mesa, but I do think putting it in the same category, elevated category as Picture Canyon is a good idea.
Definitely not something that are, I think that's a good idea, because definitely in future generations, or just trying to look beyond right now, there's a much bigger problem in the sense that the parcels that belong to the U.S. Forest Service could eventually put up for sale in a few months. So I think setting the precedent of the adjacent properties being preserves helps in that future, what will happen. So, and yeah, we kind of solidarity setting, that's totally fine and appropriate.
On your cultural comments, is Rose still with the city?
Yep.
Can we ask Rose?
Yeah.
To make some,
I thought there were cultural resources on McMillan Mesa.
I have not.
There are.
Yeah.
Technically,
There are
there's
certain
They're minor. And there are some on Observatory Mesa as well, but they are minor.
There's an ARC site near Matson Tank. right on the corner of the property.
But has it been legal outside?
No, it's got a tag and everything.
So
It's got a tag.
at any rate,
It's probably
Rose might be a person to go to first. She's an employee.
Rose Toby, she works for the city and she's the indigenous representative of the city. And indigenous, she's also an indigenous commissioner, right? So,
She's what?
Yes, she's the liaison to the original.
Is the term preserve, does that connotate for indigenous peoples the same sort of meaning that I think we're all coming to? I mean, because, I mean, I'm just gonna say what I think too, is that, I like the idea of having all of those three pieces under a similar name that we can all recognize that they get managed similarly. They are restricted from development. They are protected areas that the city has. But the fact that indigenous input, I just was wondering if the word preserve has the same connotation to an indigenous person's perspective as it does to. Right, is that equated to respectful and
Yeah.
sacred or not,
So if it weren't, would we change the name Picture Canyon?
No, I mean, I'm just wondering. No, I mean, I don't think we would, but I was, like, we're making sort of like big blanket. assumptions.
Yeah, you were asking the question, and what went through my head is Picture Canyon had all kinds of cultural input and preserve.
Is what was approved.
Maybe the word natural is the consistency across all properties. So we have McMillan Mesa Natural Area and, but we have Observatory Mesa Natural Preserve and Picture Canyon Cultural and Natural Preserve. So maybe,
I like
maybe we're killing a lot of birds with one stone there by using natural for everybody, but you're either an area or a preserve if you've got a conservation easement.
I like that. The thing that's stuck in my broad craw is the two conservation easements are by the state, someplace out of here. Miller Mesa is totally city, it's totally taxed, it's totally public, it's totally us. And whether or not they're managed the same, to me, doesn't make any difference. Since the state has a conservation easement, it's a contract with the city. We can't do anything about it. As far as McMillan Mesa is concerned, 20 years from now, if they want a baseball field there, they don't have a conservation easement to deal with. They have a whole lot of other internal city things to deal with. But it's a possibility there, where it's not a possibility for those two others. So that's why I say they're totally different. Now, how do you include the concept that you guys are bringing up to make it seem like it's city? To me, Observatory Mesa makes it seem like it's city because that is a name that's been there forever. Just like Buffalo Park. We don't say it belongs to somebody else or it's not representing of the city.
Commissioner Blue?
When you go to Rose, did you ask her on the ARC sites? I don't know if it is Indian up there, but it could be related to logging, it could be related to the cattle era. So I know it's all top secret, but could she say out of the 10 sites, 3 are Indian and 4 are logging or something? In other words, there may be no Indian ARC sites up there. I don't know, or maybe they're all Indian.
there are some Native American sites.
Okay, but yeah, but could we get a breakdown, just Indian logging, cattle, or however they break it down?
Yeah, sure.
So it sounds like, sorry, I'm sorry, I can't see you on there.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, I'm not in agreement with Commissioner White on this one. I think by having to preserve across all 3 names, I think that elevates all of them. And if indeed that if we say the two that are from the state are more special than the city, that says the city is less special than the state. And I'm not real crazy about that idea. The state does not know everything.
Why are you
And then if indeed we right now at least want to keep McMillan Mesa in its current status or improve the ecosystems up there, then making it a reserve elevates it in terms of, to me, elevates it in terms of its importance. Even though it may not have it in any management restrictions. And I'm not sure how much the public really knows the origin stories of McMillan Mesa compared to Observatory Mesa or Picture Camp. And I would like to see them all high.
I'll throw in this. McMillan Mesa was sold to the public as Buffalo Park. What was it called? Buffalo Park? And no, Buffalo Park Station Annex, Buffalo Park Annex. So
Sorry.
are we starting to think about Buffalo Park Preserve and are they treated differently? Historically, Buffalo Park was named a park back in the 70s by the council. But then it became a commercial entity with Buffalo in it. And no, prior to that, it was called Buffalo Park, but it became a park by city council. But I don't know what the definition of park is now, or McMillan Mesa Buffalo Park Annex, or it's all confusing to me. Again, I understand the point you're making, and I can only just repeat the point there's two different documentations, there's two different authorities involved. They're the same for the Picture Canyon and they're the same for Observatory Mesa, but they're not the same for Buffalo Park. They're not the same for Mesa, which was recently voted for. They're not the same for any other open space in the city. But I understand your preserve argument.
From a cost implementation standpoint, we'd be talking about changing signage and names on 2 properties as opposed to just one. If we leave McMillan Mesa natural area as is, obviously there's no cost in changing the name there. We might be constricted to only being able to actually do any change on the observatory. So,
What goes signs on McMillan Mesa?
well, I don't know. I mean,
I don't think there are any signs on
Yeah.
it.
is it? Okay, that's a good point.
Isn't the sign of?
Yeah, I think
Is it
Ashley
already
is
something?
listening to our conversation and she's actually been working on some of the sign updates that we hope to have a grant for actually. So most of McMillan Mesa does not have like formal signage. We do have that boulder that we just put in that says McMillan Mesa Natural Area. And then the foots maps around town, they do have labels on them. I have to check actually if it says McMillan Mesa or McMillan Mesa Natural Area. I have to check, but that would be a change to consider too. Yeah, but this does come, I think, at an okay time because we haven't implemented the trail plan and we haven't like finished our McMillan Mesa signage and we're getting ready to redo the Picture Canyon signage. So I think it's a good discussion to have. I think we could be here all day though.
Yeah.
Too. And another, so I don't want to mention too many other things because I think we've got our direction. Because next steps that I identified was to consult with the Indigenous Commission liaison Rose, get your input on like what kind of name would be maybe appropriate, and then to bring this back to the commission for a recommendation to our program for input. And so I don't know if you want me to formulate a couple of different name options or if the commission wants to. I think I have some direction from all of you on that. So I can come back with some recommendations.
I just have one final question in regards to the term preserved. Does that then require us to do anything particular on that property when it comes to management?
No.
If we put
So
that.
our names don't really reflect how we manage our property. The founding documents do, and that is the conservation easement and the Prop 413, which also limits development, by the way. But that.
Yeah, that's, I don't know, name is no bearing on the other legal restrictions. So if we call it inland preserve, somebody wanted to put a baseball field on it, and it's legal, they can get the baseball field. So I think preserve is more just me, you kind of set a tone.
General.
Right.
And along that line too, you make a good point, Commissioner Clune. We are hopefully not done. And I say that with hope because, we have these three categories of open space currently, a connector that connects our, what we call regional preserves and some of our like internal documents, those being Magnolia Mesa, Observatory Mesa, and Fisher Canyon. And then complementary, which the open space agreement is might refer to neighborhood woods as. So like this commission has identified other areas for regional preserves. So it is important to kind of think about future stuff too.
I think we've had a really, really great, robust discussion, and Robert has captured all the different terms that we've spoken about. And why don't we put this on the agenda for a future meeting after some consultation by Robert with the city and some more thought by the commission? Is there any public comment? Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. So I'm going to move on to C, which is where Robert is asking us, it's an information and discussion item, but he is going to ask us what we would like to be doing over the next year so that he can work on the agenda. So he came up with some ideas which are not listed on the agenda. But he is going to share not a PowerPoint, but a list of sentences with us about concepts we would like to put on the agenda over the next upcoming year.
Thanks, Chair Thomas. Yeah, this is actually an idea from your chair and vice chair as far as like providing you an update where we are on different topics and to kind of help provide the commission with some direction as we well. I did actually mean to put a PowerPoint together. I didn't get around to it, but if you have questions or any follow-up, please let me know. So I just thought I would start with some accomplishments and then we can kind of move into like a discussion of what you'd like to see on your upcoming agendas. I do have some ideas for that, but open to any ideas that you might have as well. So I'm just going to jump in. So the proposed amendment for the Observatory Mesa right-of-way easement, staff did complete the first civil plan review and provided comments. And the plans are being currently revised. So that is the axis coming up from 180 through Hidden Hollow to those private properties. Do you guys remember talking about that?
Yeah, I missed.
Yep, staff completed the first civil plan review and providing comments on that.
I'm sorry.
So good.
Sorry again.
Yeah, so the Observatory Mesa right of way through the Hidden Hollow community
Okay.
on 180 that was at the commission a few months ago for input.
Yeah.
We had some very in-depth conversations about that. We, the commission and city council voted to amend that easement. We went to Arizona State Parks Board. They also approved amending the easement. And so those private property owners completed civil plans for what construction would look like. Staff provided some comments based on the commission's and council's input. And they're currently being revised. So the next step for that would be for those plans to be approved by planning and zoning and city council. And then for staff to take that amendment of the easement forward.
Mary's on it. I haven't heard anything coming our way yet, but yeah, okay.
So I just want to provide an update.
And who are the principals that are pushing this forward?
the landowners.
So it's a group of landowners or?
Yeah, their main representative is Cody Ralston, I think his last name is.
Oh,
So
so
he's,
not the big parcel
I
owners?
think they're all involved at some level. I'm not really privy to.
I would
That's part of what I'm concerned about. Is that, well, there's nothing we can do about it, so.
Okay.
Not worth talking about now.
And then the Open Space Commission went and visited the Don Weaver Trail alignment for adjusting the submission material for the SHPO review.
Which the ground, I'm sorry, I'm missing.
No worries. Yeah, the Don Weaver realignment.
Oh, okay.
So where the pipeline is, moving that to like closer to the canyon there. So I think the next step is to get input from State Historic Preservation Office to see if they would permit that. And then this would be a decision of the State Park Board again. So if SHPO says, yes, we would work with you to like implement a trail at this location, then it goes to Arizona State Parks for approval since it is development. So similar to what we just did with the trail. So we're at the point where we're submitting the documents to SHPO now. And then the trail plan, you all know, the Greater Observatory Mesa Natural Area Plan was approved by City Council. We just went to Arizona State Parks Board on the 19th. They approved it there as well. So, we're moving forward. So our next steps would be to do the field alignments and then get a permit.
How quickly does that happen? I mean, is that like in 3 years from now or next year? Okay. Just wondering.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're working on moving forward.
Moving around.
Yes, but the field alignments will probably take like a 2-month period. We'll have to contract with them.
Okay.
Sure. There were 2 community beautification grants submitted on behalf of open space from community members, one for the Memorial Bridge for Jack Welch at Picture Canyon. And staff are working to support work and complete the project in this new fiscal year. There are 2 components for that: the artwork, which is what the beautification grant is related to, and the plaque, which was funded by citizens. Both are moving forward, but will be mounted in separate ways. And then there's a beautification grant for McMillan Mesa along the Sega Lily Isabel Street access point there. Staff are working to support some work there as well and do some erosion / landscaping at that entrance point. And then the commission reviewed the capital improvement project list. So staff have been working on figuring out how to align that work plans moving forward. I think, some of you mentioned that you'd like to see that on a future agenda based on priorities and what some of those costs came in. So we can put that on the future agenda, which is on my list down here. Regional plan comments were submitted by the Open Spaces Commission. So this is a great big project, and you guys spent a lot of time reviewing it and providing comments to that. So that was a success or an accomplishment, I would say. The grants that we've been working on, we're currently working on grant submissions now for the end of the quarter. We have 2 conservation easements, as we've been talking about, that we'll submit an annual report on here shortly. The Heritage Grant is going along well, and that project runs through August of 2026. And then we have the 2 invasive plant grants that work is ongoing on Observatory Mesa, or we'll start shortly. We finished the Malachi grant, which was a proposal to do work in Picture Canyon. And so we supported a lot of trail work in partnership with RTP grant, which we just completed this month. And then we have a couple in the works, the McMillan Mesa, the signage grant. We hope to hear in July from Arizona State Parks about whether or not we're awarded that. And then we're working on a couple projects that the commission proposed a few years back as far as the fencing on Picture Canyon and the no camping signage on McMillan Mesa We have quite a bit of no camping signs installed in McMillan Mesa now. It is not quite complete, but we'll be completing the work this fiscal year. And then we're assessing how to approach the Picture Canyon fencing project. Questions on updates or accomplishments?
Oh, I'm giving you a high five.
Great, thanks. It's you guys, so give some high five. And then some updates on trail counter data. McMillan Mesa, and jump in here, Sylvia, if I am misquoting this, but we had over 52,000 people pass the trail counter at the McMillan Mesa Bridge over last year.
Where's the McMillan Mesa Bridge?
The footbridge that crosses from Picture Canyon or from Buffalo Park to McMillan Mesa across the.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a trail counter there.
Bridge.
53,000.
It was 52,405. And then we have a trail counter observatory Mesa at the intersection of Forest Service Road 515 Mars Hill. That one has 13,484. That's at the top of the hill. You have to keep in mind. The Mars Hill trail counter has 32,775. So we're getting lots of visitation. Picture Canyon entrance, 43,410 over the course of the year.
I mean, when you say a year, like, are we at the end of the fiscal year? Is that, are we talking like?
Calendar, January.
Those are 2024
Or
numbers. Okay.
What's the Picture Canyon number?
It was 43,410.
And it is people going past the trail counter, so they might come in and then back out.
Yeah. But that was a calculation that included accounting for that, so. The lower
I have
ones.
to look at.
Okay.
It's a count dollars.
Yeah, so we do a calculation that tries to accommodate for like out and back trips. And then we have a calculation, that includes like some folks are doing a continued going and exit Picture Canyon or McMillan Mesa West. So, but that just gives you a rough idea of the use.
Buffalo Park.
I don't have one. I know we have one. You don't have no idea. We'd have to look for you.
It's in your Rose monthly report,
Ah.
which should have been all of the trail counts by the month or in your monthly newsletter that you is linked to your.
Sure. Buffalo Park is probably the winner. Yeah. It's a lot used.
The April number on Buffalo Park is almost 4,000. April 2025.
Okay, well, if there's no questions, then I'm going to move into like what areas could be future focus by the commission.
Hey, can I provide an update on that? It's actually the Buffalo Park Loop is just under 10,000 on the Buffalo Park Loop for April 2025. But the Buffalo Arizona Trail is just under 4.
So the commission has been working on providing comments to the regional plan. I did reach out to the group that's been working on that, and they reported that they have an in-progress comment response tracking document they're waiting to finalize until the public hearing draft is ready. And that some parts of the draft have been a moving target, such as trails. And they're expecting to release that. And so that when that is released, the commission will be able to see which of their comments that they've already submitted were incorporated in this latest plan. They're expecting to release that public hearing draft on July 18th. I think that's a tentative date, but sometime in July. So I did send you an email about the incorporation of your comments. So if you haven't looked at that already, look at it, and that way you'll know which comments you'll want to make there. I do think like this would be a great thing to have on a future agenda. The Sarah Doctor actually recommended that in addition to having written comments, that the commission select a representative to go and provide comments at the future hearings. And so there's a whole list of these there's actually a meeting tomorrow at City Council. And they're going to be talking about the land use framework and determining the mapping results amongst other items. So that might be something that y'all are interested in tuning into.
The trail mapping.
Yes, yeah. And so there was a joint meeting between the county and the city council a while ago about like what those maps look like, whether they're just arrows or whether they're conceptual lines. They did provide those in the agenda. It might be of interest for you to look at. And their latest proposal is to have very conceptual lines across acreage. Planned trails on private land over 400 acres with no property rights.
Because those did get pulled out initially. I'm gonna talk about that too. Okay, great.
Feel free to check in.
Yeah, sure, yeah, no, you're right, though, they're meeting in the city council's work session tomorrow. They're gonna talk about the regional plan, and the main topics are land use categories. Yes, the trail, the proposed trails. And they're dividing it now between, we're at that May 2nd collaborative meeting that we had with the county and city elected officials and both P and Z commissions from both county and city. Is that there would be dotted lines across private property where there would be hopeful trails later. But on tomorrow's agenda, what I noticed is they're further differentiating that between private property that's less than 400 acres and private property that's over 400 acres, which leads me into this other thing that they'll be discussing is at that May 2nd regional planning collaborative meeting. One of the major property owners, Little America, was there asking for a regional hospitality resort overlay. And so I think it sounds like what I'm gathering is staff has kind of really looked at that in deeper detail. We don't have such a thing here as a hospitality or a resort overlay. What was a flag for me was that, at least when I heard about it and got the documents back in May, is that it was an invisible trigger for properties over 400 acres. And that applies to every major property owner that's developing south of the 40. So for instance, Little America owns 536 acres. Symmetry owns 405 acres. So I think that's where the threshold got laid. Roberts Resorts and Communities that bought the state land property over by Woody Mountain is 522 acres. And then of course, Capstone owns all of Juniper Point and Canyon Del Rio, except what they've sold to multifamily developers or to the Mormon church for the temple. So it'll be interesting to see what they say about what this regional hospitality overlay could look like, and what they're going to do about it or not. I'm going to go tomorrow and listen in. I've already expressed my thoughts to council and staff in an email. But anyway, so there's a few things that apply to things that we care about here on Open Space, because we are watching and hopeful for things that do happen and develop along those greenfield sites. So that's
What time is that?
so that's the city council meeting tomorrow. That starts at 3. It's a little further down their agenda, but they're really very quick moving these days on council. So
Can you clarify what, as far as the overlay, what is that?
yeah, so it created some looser, lack of terms on my part, but some looser guidelines, more flexibility, fewer restrictions, more flexibility. And then when it comes to those trails, not part of the resort overlay, but when it comes to it, they want to delineate the trails. I think a lot of us have felt, or the community in general feels, that there should be more delineation of where hopeful trails would go on a parcel that big, because we're concerned about trails, that there are ample trails and that there's connectivity, not less guidance on where trails would be on a parcel at large. So not sure where they're going with that either, and why there would need to be a differentiation between private property over 400 and under 400 for the way they delineate hopeful trails.
Well, and it's not just Hopeful Trails. I mean, there are existing trails in some of these areas.
Right.
I mean,
They're
trails,
not
right, they're right. They've been there for 30, 40 years. But they're on private property. So,
They are. It's all private property.
so the idea is the maps were created with dotted lines in May, and then the dotted lines disappeared under requests. And now they're back on again, but they're yellow. They're light yellow lines now. But this is some of the concepts where we were trying to get the tank. What's the name of that tank?
Oh, Hoffman tank.
Hoffman tank, like, you know, as a corridor to get to the Forest Service from downtown Flagstaff, pretty much, or at least underneath the 40.
You were gonna say, I'm good. On my own, I sent that email to you, I sent it to Sarah, that the map that has dotted lines on it. There are some missing already dedicated paths that aren't on the map. The Observatory Mesa, not Observatory, Flagstaff Mesa, dedicated foot trails are not on the map. And the other suggestion I made, that comes from my historic background, is first discussing the foots. One of the impetus for being urgent about coming up with a foot system was we were losing access to the national forests all around the city. And so to try to get paths in that allow access to the forest service, I would think on that map, you should have at least a mark or a key saying current Forest Service access. It gives the total picture of the Foots Trail system. And it brings in one of the important historic aspects of the Foots Trail system is access to the forest. There is on the east side, the end of 4th Street, that boundary that goes east-west of the end of the development. Between that and Mount Eldon is city land. I mean, it's in the city limits, but it's Forest Service land. And it's a plan for an east-west trail to start from El Paso and going all the way over to Spruce Canyon and also to Buffalo Park. That should be on there. It's within the city limits, even though it's Forest Service lands. So that part of what I'm saying is all connections with the Forest Service ought to be noted on that plan. What it does is it gives you a perspective of, oh, this development is going in here, and this could be the entrance to this. And so we need to plan for that, or at least consider it, and let the staff have some leg to stand on when they're debating with a developer whether or not they could get access there. Not that it's on the plan and will be there forever, but it's on the plan for discussion in the future. So
they're trying to get this map up on the screen behind us. And maybe Robert will just have to email it to us. But, the suggestion was that we had a representative at these meetings. I'm not sure it can always be the same person. But, I mean, should we have, I guess what I want to know is, should we have someone at the meeting tomorrow?
I will be there.
Mary will be there.
How can you speak? How do you speak?
But-
Yeah, how do you speak?
I'm not allowed to speak as a commission member, and I speak as a citizen when I do speak. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, if we were giving a message, that we've developed here, then anybody could deliver that, I think, tomorrow's work session is more of a learning opportunity to see where staff and council are going in their thought process for
Okay,
these issues. I think if that draft of the regional plan hits on July 18th, I think we, need to all check it so that we can have it on our agenda in July to talk about.
okay.
So, and then some of these are obviously before planning and zoning, August and September. And as the liaison from open space, obviously I can have that kind of input there as well. But again, public speakers of all kinds and anybody else from the commission are always helpful. And I think having it be verbal is a good thing. Yes, I'm writing, but we've provided written comments, but I think those ones in person are sometimes more impactful.
Okay, I can't make a commitment to go tomorrow. It's already committed to something else.
I could, I would walk away, but, I have an appointment until 3:30. I can be there.
Yeah, I
They
probably,
probably won't be up before 3:30.
yeah, probably not.
I think it's the last item on tomorrow's agenda.
Yeah.
So it'll probably,
Or.
now I'll jinx it.
Yeah, you don't say, oh, I just want to make sure, I think we should get
So
to,
it's straight there.
we should just not have a quorum. Or if we have a quorum, we need to tell Robert, like, today.
I won't be there.
Okay, and I won't be there. And you won't be there, so there won't be a quorum. Okay,
I can show up
and speak as a private citizen.
I wouldn't be speaking. To me, it's a listening session.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks, everybody for all the input there.
You can.
So I will,
Online.
yeah, you can join online, or you can watch it afterwards, the recording afterwards too. Yeah, this might be a good.
I think for your purpose to put it on our agendas.
Yep.
For probably July and August.
Yeah.
And the link
And-
to the meeting.
If you can all be thinking about well, getting ready to review that, there's gonna be a short amount of time, I think, for us, a short turnaround time for us. And then selecting a representative to do some of those in person.
I wanted to segue. I know you're working on what our priorities could be moving forward in watching this process of the regional plan. I think it's even more important that pros have a master plan. As the regional plan gets, in all realistic efforts, and it makes sense to have it be simplified and clear, and easy to work with and read and implement document. We also lose some of the meat and potatoes, particularly for us here on open spaces. And oftentimes what I heard was, well, all the other strategic plans, master plans are what we refer to. Well, we don't have a master plan yet. We have a strategic plan, but we don't have a master plan. So I think it's really, it's become more of a priority in my eyes that this division have a master plan.
I'm gonna go ahead and move to the next one here, and that is the last cap, the land use study and the code concept. So a community meeting conversation happened on the 13th of this month. And right now, community development is looking for feedback on the code concepts report. If the Open Space Commission wanted to review this report and provide feedback before the city council meeting, I think that might be helpful. The city council meeting is scheduled for August 26, 2025. The next steps is the next step after that would be a final code recommendation to city council. So they'll be working on drafting that code. And I think the final code recommendation would go to city council on October 26th.
Rob, I can add in, I was present for that Friday, the 13th, Framing Our Future Together, Community Conversation is what it was called. It was up at the Lowell Observatory. And it was really very, very interesting and informative. And but some of the main points that they were really centered on at that time was about where and how should they increase density, how to measure density, energy efficiency and resilient design, parking regulations, street width strategies, and winter parking ordinances. Those are all the things that they're looking at tweaking. That end result is, obviously contributing to working toward our housing crisis and the climate emergency. But those were the main points that were discussed there.
Yeah, thanks for that.
And you were there all day too, and so was Rebecca.
Most of it.
Yeah.
I was actually hoping that they recorded that and that we could share that with Commission.
I don't know that they did.
I think they recorded it, I just don't know where it will be posted yet. But we can ask,
If this is,
they wanted us to use them all day.
if this is interest of the commission to review this and weigh in, I'd recommend like watching that recording. Because it explains a little bit more about what Commissioner Norton was explaining about, like the need to increase density to provide more housing for the city of Flagstaff and how they would go about doing that. Whether that would be not requiring a development to go through a rezoning process because they'd be changing the zoning of property. So that could affect like a development. If it's more dense, then there could be some portion of the property that might be available for like open space if it's done in a well planned out way. So during the presentation they presented that it could be a benefit to parks and open space by allowing an increase in density. But what I failed to see was how that would be a benefit. There's no like language that they shared that I saw that would lead that direction. So that might be something that the commission would want to look at and maybe even make a recommendation for something.
Could you send us the links to the two things that you mentioned are important to follow up on?
There's possibly a recording of the meeting that everybody was at describing the where and the how of the increased density, but I don't think there's a report.
But then there's the previous one that you suggested we should look at.
That was the regional plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that has not been published yet.
So there's no link to
The
that.
most recent, no, there's no link until July, sometime in July, maybe July 18th. But I can certainly look into this recording and then see if I could send that to you. But you meant the code concept report. The last code concept
Yes,
report.
that's the one.
That is online. Yes, that would be worth. Yeah, I can send you the link to that. And
Is that easy to read?
I think it's 300 pages or something. So
300 pages.
I
Oh,
can't
not 300 pages. I'm not gonna read it, but
It's
improve
it's very
what
long.
affects us.
Okay.
It's 108. I'm sorry, I exaggerated a little bit.
Okay.
So that could be something that we could put on an agenda as well.
Before August 25th.
Yes. Makes sense. Yes. And then I wanted to try to provide you with a quick update of the resource protection overlay. So the forest resource pilot program zoning code text amendment went to city council for the first read, and the second, no, excuse me. Yeah, it already went to council for the first read, and the second read is on July 1st. This is to implement the pilot program that is good for 3 years. That encourages developers to try this new way of doing it. And then they hope to have the code drafted before the end of that 3-year period. And then the program is intended to provide the use and use the details for updating the code. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add to that.
I can tag on
Yeah.
to that because it came through P and Z, and then it went to, we had a lot of questions and concerns about it. I think Nat was there at our work session. And then it went to city council, and they approved it. It's sort of a loose collaborative sort of consensus building plan to try, and completely understand the need to try something new and different and see if it will work, if they'll get the results they're looking for, and if they'll get participants that are willing to sign on and try it. And I think everybody hopes some good will come out of it, some information will come out of it, and I think it's just a wait and see and something to watch. I know planning and zoning asked for regular updates, like if they get applicants that are interested in taking part in it and how it's working, and but there was just no threshold of resource protection. It was, like I said, just a much looser way to go about it. So subjective in some ways, but also allows for some creativity and customization per parcel. So that's the give and take.
Yeah, and so as my understanding, there's no comments to really be provided at this time, because they're like,
They don't
we're
have it.
entering into this pilot era. But I think that this would be something maybe worthwhile for the commission and for staff to kind of keep their ear to the ground on and continue to provide updates and think about providing comments when that time comes. Anything else on that? And then have the JW specific plan on this list. They did have an open house. Like I said, once in May, seems like yesterday, where they invited the public to come and provide comments, like on on construction of the JW specific plan. And there is the priority that the commission has elected for the Hoffman tank that Commissioner Thomas mentioned earlier. And so there are interests for connectivity in this particular area. I do not know like the process for providing comments on this yet, but I can look into this, and this might be something that the commission has interest in reviewing and commenting on. Those are some waiting topics.
Do we have more to add? Like, it's like, wow.
I've also got on here listed revisiting the code, and these are just revisions for saying what you can and can't do on open space. So we could work on that, and then the pros master plan support. I don't really know what that looks like yet, but once I do, I'll bring that forth to the commission as well. So those are some of the ideas that I had for future agendas. I'll let you guys discuss them if you have other items.
Don't we have a master plan for open space? With a management plan or?
We do have a management plan that directs like our management for passive recreation on our property. Yeah, and that sets goals and objectives in that plan as well. Our section has a strategic plan, thanks to Sylvia Struce. She prepared that for us, and that kind of outlines like what projects are priorities for staff to work on, and we build our work plans based on that. We do not have a master plan for planning of open space connections and complementary open space for the city of Flagstaff. We do have a very general map that's called the open space system map that outlines kind of a vision of what that could look like to provide 10-minute access walking time to residents, utilizing drainage areas, slopes, looking at property purchases and partnerships and things of that nature. It is very general. That is not in a master plan this time. That is more of like a staff document.
Does a master plan have to be approved by city council or something?
It does, and it also involves a lot of public participation. Like it involves documenting public meetings and giving input. So it's a pretty involved process. I don't know if Director Sayers wants to.
Yeah, I can add a little bit. What we have funding to do is just honestly been a matter of time at this point. We need to do a procurement process to find a vendor. But our vision is to do a parks recreation open space master plan that covers our whole division, helps us all work together and integrate, but also provide the support needed to open space, provide the support needed for developing new parks and new neighborhoods, And recreation too, because we have 4 rec centers, don't forget. But they're old and they're in existing locations that are nowhere near all of the new development being built, right? So that entire area is devoid of parks, recreation, and open space. If we have a master plan, and thank you for your comments, Commissioner Norton, because you're spot on. If we have a master plan, our planning team can look to that as guidance when developments are coming forward. We just need to get it going. So that's what the plan is, that it would be a division-wide, and open space will either be integrated or have its own chapter, probably. I think we'll be looking for the professionals to tell us what they think is best in their proposals, but we want to support each of those areas.
How do we get that ball rolling?
Oh, it's us.
How can we support, like,
It's totally in our court. We just need to get that procurement going, and we promised our finance and budget team that we would this year, because we've been carrying forward the funds for
Okay.
quite a few years now.
Huh.
So it is squarely in our court, and we will get that started within this next fiscal year.
do you think working through the trail plan and the procurement of, having someone help us with that and like other things you tell Parks and Rec are helpful and keep it prepared?
I see all of those. Honestly, it's nice that those are completed, because I see all of those feeding into this master plan. Recreation just did a citywide survey. All of that information feeds in, but a typical master plan, typical Parks and Rec master plan has focus groups and lots and lots of different ways of getting community, excuse me, input in a way that is meaningful.
Would it be helpful if we like had it on, like, is there a way we could be helpful? Like not stressful, but like helpful is like.
And I think that's what Robert is referring to. Once we get it going, especially after we have the procurement and a vendor solidified, like the Open Space Commission, I guarantee will be a focus group. And so they will have very specific questions for you all to provide feedback to them as to your vision. The community can be invited. Obviously, it's a commission meeting. But you as a commission will have an opportunity to provide input to it. So will the Parks and Rec Commission. And then where we can use your help at that point too is getting the rest of the community, your friends, your family, getting them to participate in the process, whether it's taking a survey or attending these public meetings and focus group meetings, things like that.
I think could have like open space people kind of primed now after the trail. It's been done.
Yeah, I think the open space part of it, quite frankly, is a lot of it's done already. The staff has a great strategic plan that we'll provide that shows them what kind of the staff planning and priorities and goals are for the next 3 to 5 years. We know what we need in parks and recreation. It's just a matter of pulling it all together. But it's not recreating anything that we already have. So we're not recreating any sort of trail plan or management plan, or it's all feeding into and supporting an overall vision that will take us through the next 10 to 15 years. And Parks and Recreation does have a master plan that was adopted by council in 2013. It's just that it's very old. And a lot of it's gonna say the same thing, unfortunately. And I know we're short on time, so I'll stop there.
And I support that we put that support everyone in the city to get a master plan go this year.
I hear you.
Crucial.
I hear you.
Okay, are we moving on? Does anyone have more to add? We're at 10 to 6 right now. To Rob's fantastic list.
I would just ask, is there anything else that we can do to support or help with our purchasing power, so to speak, as far as fundraising and being able to have more agility. I think that's another big part in congruent with the master plan. We need more money to do things quickly, so.
Yeah, thanks so much for the question, Commissioner Joyce. I am working with real estate to try to spend the range for bond fund. The Hopkins Page corridor is going to slip to back burner because of the difficulty of property negotiations. We do have our eye on a couple of other priorities. We have moved forward with property tree next to the intersection along the Christian Street line. That is moving forward a little slowly. We are working on getting a corridor that would provide the Woods Trail connection to Fisher Canyon through Restoration Soils, Suffolk's property, and county property. So we've been working on that. We've been working on the lower Campino access point as we're trying to set. We have the Fimbres has been firmed up, and now we're working on like this mission brand. So I'll worry about that soon.
Great.
And then we're working on another potential property along the Foots coming north out of like Fort Tuttle, which is also a 2004 bond on priority. There's only $1 million allocated from the 2004 bond fund for open space type acquisitions. That's not going to take us super far. The commission might remember that in the CIP plan that we did allocate $800,000 for acquisition a few years out from now. So that could be utilized. And if the commission wants to see that on the agenda again, you could talk a little bit about reorganizing some of that. Yeah, as far as like long-term funding, we don't have a solution. I have started some very preliminary discussions with the Trust for Public Land about like what are the considerations that communities use for private open space. So we are working on planning like one of the very first staff meetings with the city. So I think if we could get some feedback about more about what other communities are doing and how we can approach it, that might provide us with a little bit more like power to like move them things forward. But if commissioners have ideas for funding, that would be great. Then water conservation fund is great, community forests. If you have other ideas for acquisition, we have like a list of acquisitions that are important for the open space system. It's mainly money and time that it takes to move those forward. Only thing you don't have is a lot of money for like match. So that's where it gets challenging.
Yeah, Trust for Public Lands. Maybe I can be of some assistance, at least because of the experience I've had in that. So we could talk about it.
Great.
I tried to get involved, to help with the purchase of the Lockett land, which is now Meadows or what it's called. And they have parameters that don't show up until you get down to the nitty-gritty. Maybe I can share my experience with them.
That'd be great. Yeah, you want to go some. Let me know.
Commissioner, so the 800,000 that you said was earmarked for land acquisition, could that be manipulated to the match funding if it is for land acquisitions?
Yeah, you can use that for matching.
We just don't have it yet.
Well, the CIP plan like determines when we'll have that money as far as the year. So it's not
2028.
That's still accrued.
yeah, things.
Yeah, I think it's 2028.
Yeah.
But we strategically placed it in that year because a lot of these big grants take 1 or 2 years.
Right.
Plus you need, if you're purchasing property and getting a grant for that, you typically need property owner, some sort of agreement with the property owner. So all of that was intended to all line up at that 2028 time. So it's more than just letting the funding accrue
Oh, yeah.
as for the date that we put on it.
Okay, any more? I mean, this is ongoing. We can always add things to our future plan. Got a lot to fill, yeah. So I'm just gonna move on to reports and updates. Council member, council representative David Spence.
I don't have anything specific from the council back to the commission. I do try to tell them what you all are doing, and of course, when you have formal proposals, do come to the council, but I don't have anything specific. Thank you.
Representative Mary Norton, planning and zoning.
Yeah, I only have one other point that we didn't already incorporate into our previous discussion, and it isn't something that's come to P and Z yet, but it will. And as community members that we all are, as well as this commission who does follow the development and open space needs along the JW Health Corridor, there is a community meeting for a conditional use permit request for a golf course and related amenities. In the expansion section of Symmetry's Pine Canyon, which is within the southern 126 acres of the greater 405 acres that I mentioned earlier, which was that state land parcel that they took down. It will be held by Zoom next Wednesday, July 2nd at 5:30. So if you're interested in listening in and learning what they are proposing, that's available to anybody in the community. There's not a lot of neighbors surrounding it to notify, so the greater community could certainly listen and learn, chime in. If you need the Zoom link, or if you haven't seen it out in the public forum, it is kind of going around. Either I or Robert, or I can give it to Robert what I've seen, because I've only seen it as a community member myself. It's like I said, it hasn't come through P&Z officially. Could get the link to you.
Yeah, could you? Because I'll share it with people that live in that area.
Basically, I have a photo of the sign that is posted nearby. So,
Okay.
okay. Yes, that's it.
And Robert or Sylvia, open space management report?
Yeah, I think so.
Sure.
So Robert mentioned the connection, the Foots connection, proposed Foots connection from Route 66 to Picture Canyon, old Route 66. And we did a grant application to the Tohono Nation. They have to give away 12% of their casino profits every year. So I asked for $175,000.
Nice.
We applied several times before, but I realized we were asking for too small amount of money. I realized that they were giving away grants for like $250,000. We had to ask for more. At McMillan Mesa, there have been a number of abandoned campsites and trash piles that we've cleaned up in the last month. Big ones.
Thank you.
And at the bottom of McMillan Mesa along North Isabel Street, there's a beautification grant that was approved to plant some native plants at the bottom of Sago Lily Trail. And so we did some work we put some riprap rock going up kind of the drainage area that was coming down that way. And then we've noticed that another neighbor is starting to plant things along that hillside too. So it's kind of catching on. It's kind of cool. And Observatory Mesa, just right after the whole trail plan thing, we were notified of a bunch of illegal mountain biking trails way out off of Railroad Springs, like out in the Railroad Springs area. And I went up there and they're pretty extensive, like loops and loops and loops. So that's pretty frustrating. So we'll be working on that. I put some signs up saying this is not an authorized trail, please don't use it or build it, and they're gone. Signs are gone, so we're gonna go out there and try that again, but
Whereabouts?
if you have any connections.
Whereabouts are they?
So if you go in the Tunnel Springs Trail, right, from Railroad Springs, and you go in the Tunnel Springs Trail, right after the gate, there's a trail that goes to the left side, and that's proposed to be one of the adopted trails there. But at the end of that, you see this trail coming down the hill from the foots, and then it literally just, there's, I think, 4 or 5 loops, big loops.
I know where you're talking about. I know the furthest west loops are old moto turn tracks that have been there a long time. As far as newer mountain bike ones, I'll ask around.
Yeah, like one of our stewards saw people with shovels actually building. So, yeah. So work on that. And upcoming events, we have the bug out at Francis Short Pond, which is great for kids. So if you've got kids or grandkids, that's on the 28th, which is this coming Saturday, from 10 to 12 at Francis Short Pond. NAU Bug Lab will bring their exotic bugs, and then we just get a bucket of water out of Francis Short Pond and check out the water bugs. And then we have a couple of tables on pollinators. So, we've started our Wednesday weed polls at Picture Canyon. The next one is on July 2nd. Next week already?
Yeah, week after that.
That's next week, isn't it?
Next week is July 2nd.
I know, right?
Oh, yeah, it would be.
We had a couple of invasive weed workshops. We actually had one that was at the East Flag Library during lunchtime, where Renee Benally from the Navajo Nation came and talked about their weed management on the Navajo Nation. She's got a great presentation. And then we had a workshop in the evening off of Dog Pound Road. And had good attendance at that. And then people requested a native plant workshop as well. So we did that on the 17th. Out behind Sam's Club, the Flagstaff wetlands back there, and combined it with a pollinator event and combined it with, there was a woman who's involved with the Northern Arizona Pollinator Association, something like that. And they wanted to plant milkweed. And so it was also a planting event as well. Next full moon is bike ride, not a hike, Buffalo Park and McMillan Mesa Loop, on July 10th at 7:30. And there's a prairie dog event coming up. We're partners with Arizona Watchable Wildlife, Watchable Wildlife Experience. So prairie dog event, on July 19th at Campbell Mesa. And then we have some mushroom hikes coming up on August 23rd. And they are limited to the number of people. And so if you want to sign up for those, you need to go on volunteer.flagstaffaz.gov to sign up. And then you can complete your emergency contact and your volunteer waiver too. So that's me.
Good job.
The monthly newsletter should have been emailed to you. Informational items to and from commissioners and staff.
I just wanted to say one thing. Thank you, Dave, for coming in each of these meetings and staying to almost to the end, or to the end. Really appreciate it.
I'm glad to do it.
I think we've covered potential future agenda items. Yeah, okay. I'd like to ask for an adjournment. All agree? Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Robert?